The in-season tournament schedule released. Who are the Hornets going to be playing in group play? And then we'll rummage through the Sicko Satchel all today on Locked On Hornets.
We're Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that does include YouTube. I guess we're not on here every day. Been a little while. Actually, like the longest break that we've had, I think, in quite some time. That's Doug Branson. You can see him on YouTube if you're watching. EveryHornetsBoxscore.com. You can check out more of his content. Listen to me every weekday on WFNZ from 12 to 3. Is this the longest we've been apart since we've been doing the podcast on a daily basis?
Well, being apart makes the heart grow fonder, and people had started to get worried about us on the YouTube channel. They had started commenting that our back and forth was getting a little bit terse, you and I. And I said, listen, marriage is hard.
Worried.
When you've been married as long as Walker and I have, it gets tough. And sometimes, yes, the language does get a little harsh, but you always bring it back. You take a little break, and you come back and things are much better. I've got a shout out that I want to get to before we get really started into this show. Got to shout out two folks that came up to me during a street festival in Nashville, Tennessee, recognized me from the YouTube channel, from the show. One was from Charlotte and the other person was from here in Nashville, but both were hardcore Hornets fans. They love the show. They love you, Walker. They love me. And they were just big fans of the show, showing support here in Nashville. And got to shout out those folks. Anyone that comes up to me, you and I got shouted out, I think, when we were in, I got shouted out when I was on Davidson Street in Charlotte. So people, listen, since we've been on YouTube, they recognize it's a fun thing.
Yeah, that was for the draft. Yes, I remember going to Thomas Davis's place. That's cool, man. We appreciate the hell out of people shouting us out. I've seen the same two guys at two different places. And one time I saw them in Uptown. We talked to them a little bit, and then they came to me again when I was in Plaza. They're like, hey, do you remember? I was like, yeah, I remember y'all. What's going on? So appreciate. Yes, stop us. Let us know how much you enjoy the show and talk to us a little bit about the Charlotte Hornets. We'd love to do it if you see us.
And listen, I'll sign autographs. I signed something for the two people. They said, hey, we didn't ask for that. I said, it's okay. And they said, no, seriously, stop writing all over our stuff. It was a fun interaction, But listen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we've taken this long break. Someone on the comments on YouTube said we lied to them. Well, listen, just get used to it. I mean, that's kind of what we do on this show. Sometimes we promise things. Most of the time we come through, but
we've been better. We've been so much better than we used to be. We used to be god awful at it, but we've gotten a lot better.
It's true, but you have to understand a couple of things. Number one, I have a baby. And because I have a baby, that means I get sick more often. And that is why we didn't do a show yesterday. I was ill. I went to the doctor. And the doctor took one look at my throat and said, listen, you've got to give this thing a rest. You've got to stop talking. I said, doctor, you don't understand. I've got the top 35 Hornets nicknames to get to. He said, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. I said, I haven't even gotten to Matt Geiger yet. And the doctor said, the Geiger counter? I said, yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And he said, listen, I don't care. Bottom line, you're sick. You've got to stop. And I said, doctor, I looked right into his eyes. I said, doctor, there is no cure for the sickness that I have. And you know what he said to me? You know what he said to me, Walker? Mm-hmm. He said, would you like a free salt cube? And it was at that point that I realized that I'd accidentally gone to a horse doctor and not a regular doctor.
Oh, that's why the long face. Also, I'm glad that you said you're going to be bringing the people the top 35 Hornets nicknames list tomorrow. You're actually not going to be doing it today because you got to get on the show. So we're going to do one show without the list, and then we're going to get to the list. But that was pressing. That was a pressing issue.
True. Shout out to Dr. Horse, though. Dr. Horse took care of me. I feel a little bit better. I feel good enough to get on here and rap with you.
Dr. Horse, not the greatest name for a throat doctor, by the way.
Well, for a horse doctor, it's a great name. That's why I was confused. I thought Dr. Horse, there's no way that Dr. Horse could also be a horse doctor. Turns out he was.
Probably the most unnecessary intro of all time, I'll also say. Making history a couple of times here. Let's actually get to some Hornets news, some legitimate Charlotte Hornets news. The schedule was released for the in-season tournament. Doug, can I just tell you, I'm kind of excited about this thing. I know everybody's having mixed emotions about it. I'm in the group that doesn't quite know how to feel about it, not trying to put all of the logical things together. How should I feel? I'm just telling you how I naturally feel. And I'm excited. I think this is going to be something cool that breaks up the monotony that is the regular season. If you are talking about how 82 games is too long and there's not enough eyeballs on the games in December, January, right in the middle portion, it's going to be in November. So it's a little early. I mean, I guess you would want it to be a little bit later, but I have no problem with it that much to have it in November. So November 10th, circle the calendars, as Rod Boone says on the Charlotte Observer. That's when we're going to get going at this thing. What kind of schedule analysis do you have for us, Doug?
Well, as a Hornets fan, I don't think you want this thing to be later. I think it benefits the Hornets who are at least due to play an up-tempo style offense to play teams early, to catch them off guard before they've got all of their defensive schemes set. Later on, look, this group is not totally favorable to the Charlotte Hornets. They've got Milwaukee, they've got the Knicks, Miami, Washington is the one team you look at and go, okay, Charlotte can compete there. But I think they can compete against all of these teams because it is early, because the Hornets will have an opportunity to jump on a few folks. Now, we don't know what the schedule is. I assume this will be the first time that these teams play one another, but we don't get the full schedule release until Thursday. But I assume that, Charlotte at Washington on November 10th, they won't play them prior to that. So hopefully it is their first opportunity to play one another, and Charlotte can kind of sneak up on a few of these teams. And maybe it's possible, if everything comes together, that they could sneak up on teams. Now, I guess the one reason you would want it to be later as a Hornets fan, just from a technical point, would be, and again, I don't know how many games they will have prior to November 10th, but I would think that Miles Bridges probably not going to play all of these group games, if any. So I guess that would be the one technical point of wanting it to be a little bit later.
Yeah. It's going to be close, right? I mean, I guess if it's so just real quickly, you're right. I shouldn't say that the entire schedule is released, but we have an idea of what's going to happen. So November 10th, that's when the Charlotte Hornets, that's when their first game will be, the NBA's inaugural in-season tournament, the newly created annual competition for all 30 teams that will conclude with a championship game on December 9th in Las Vegas. The Hornets will travel to Washington for a date with the Wizards to begin their East Group 3 schedule before hosting Miami on November 14th, the league announced yesterday. Then Charlotte also takes on Milwaukee on November 17th. That game will be at the Spectrum Center prior to wrapping up group action in New York against the Knicks on November 28th. So here's another thing that I wasn't aware of. Kind of long. You're talking about a couple of weeks long that this in-season tournament is going to take place. Yeah. I thought it might be just a week-long thing before actually digging into the details, but November 10th is when we're going to get started. November 28th is when you're going to wrap up group play, and December 9th, if the Charlotte Hornets can find themselves in the championship game, December 9th, this thing is a month long, flat out. I didn't expect it to be that long.
Well, and there will be other regular season games sprinkled, within that period, right? And so that's another factor. You play Miami on the 14th, maybe you play somebody else on the 15th, and you have an injury, and that injury is going to affect your game against Milwaukee on the 17th. So a lot of variables. And let me just say, as a lifelong soccer fan for the past 9 months, I'm super excited.
That long? I didn't even think it was that long, to be honest. But
I don't know. I'm just guessing at this point. I don't really know. But I am super excited for this because what it represents, Walker, and this is what I would say to anyone that is questioning whether or not to be excited about this. I don't think you need to be excited about the idea in a vacuum of group play and then a tournament and then a winner and they get $500,000 and whatever. I don't think you need to be excited about that. I think what you need to be excited about is that the NBA is embracing change, because I think I hope that this is an introduction of change that will ultimately, over the next 5 to 10 years, result in some major changes in the schedule and the way that the league operates. And I think it's the perfect time to do that because you've got TV contracts that will eventually end. You've got TV providers, game providers that are going bankrupt. I think the NBA needs to seriously rethink how they deliver their product, both to aging generations like mine, but also to younger generations that are consuming the game in a different way. And so I think this is a great way to start that process. This is not the end goal. This tournament will iterate. They will change. It will not be this way probably even next season, they'll look at it and go, well, this worked, this didn't work. And so I'm super excited for the NBA to make any changes that I hope will eventually lead to maybe even less regular season games, more important games, because that's what this is all about. Making the regular season more important, more vital to watch, because it's vital for me to watch pretty much each and every game for Nashville SC, the soccer team that I cheer for in the MLS, and for Manchester City, the team that I cheer for in EPL. I have to watch their games because each one of their regular season games, even though they play a lot of them, are super important for their postseason chances.
I can't help but feel slighted that you want change to happen next year regarding the in-season tournament, but you don't like it when my top 35 Hornets list changes. What's the deal? What's the difference? If you want it to be more important, then my list changing makes it more important. I can't help but feel slighted.
Well, because the NBA has been doing this thing for 75 plus years. I think it's about time for some change. You have been doing this list. This is only your second opportunity to do this list. That's the difference.
Whatever. 75 hours of work, though. I think that actually demands some attention. All right. No list, though, today, though. So I can put in some more work and then change the list around a little bit more. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Doug, he sounded the alarm for the Sicko Satchel. We got some questions to answer in the next couple of segments, so we will do that in just a moment. But not before we bring up FanDuel. We always appreciate FanDuel. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season, it's about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets back for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on everything from spreads to player props, over-unders, even more than that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon, FanDuel.com/lockedon. More Locked On Hornets coming up next.
Is Locked On Hornets.
Doug is wearing his sunglasses indoors at, as we record, 8:23 a.m. Doug, explain yourself.
I am smothered in U.S. soccer. Came down to Charlotte to watch the men's national team. Saw Jesus back-to-back Hattie. There's your soccer analysis for the day. But yeah, you don't want to see these eyeballs. Okay, these eyeballs, these retinas have seen some things, if you will. And yeah, I'm recovering and I'm doing my best here.
It's time for more of the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Doug, you are the keeper of the Sicko Satchel. What question tickled your fancy so much that you wanted to ask it immediately?
I opened the Sicko Satchel before I actually got sick, but it turns out that was a savvy move because it's always fun to go to the Sicko Satchel when you need a little bit of easy content. And the Sickos deliver. They always do. I mentioned on X or Twitter or whatever that the channel, our YouTube channel, has eclipsed 1 million views. And we are just a few subscribers away from 5,000, folks. And I think the bet is still on that if we get to 5,000, I've got to wear the grandmama costume. So
that's changed.
That's coming up.
You made that bet. How many years? Like, we are talking more than a year ago. You made that bet because just to give people a peek behind the curtain, back when we thought Facebook might carry some momentum, you bet that, okay, if we get however many friends on Facebook, followers on our Facebook page, then you will do the grandmama thing. We weren't getting many on Facebook because nobody was going there. So it's like, all right, this is dumb. There's no reason to continue to embrace this. So let's actually just put all of our betting resources into the subscribers on the YouTube channel. And Here we are, close to 5,000 subscribers. And it's been a long time, but you made that bet for one number and then we changed it again. It's about to happen. I'm excited for you.
I'm excited. It is a little hot right now, so wearing all of that gear is going to be interesting with it being so hot. But I do it all for the fans, for the sickos who have opened up, who have delivered into the satchel some great questions. And the first one that I'd like to select is from Casual Hindu, big fan of the show. He's also on Every Hornets Boxscore.com.
Big time supporter. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Casual Hindu asks, who is the one player you wish had worked out in Hornets history? So a player that the Hornets acquired. There's no draft qualification here, so it could also be a free agent or a trade. But a player that didn't work out Is there one that you wish had worked out, and which player would you choose?
Okay, so it opens it up a little bit because I was more so going with the draft qualification, even if that wasn't specifically mentioned. I was kind of more going that. You know who I'm going to choose. The whole fan base, anybody that's been paying attention knows, they know exactly who I'm going to take here. That rule does change it. I mean, I have to I have to go with my head here a little bit, but my heart. Go ahead, Doug. You can answer this question for me.
DJ Augustine.
That's it. That's right. DJ Augustine.
No, it's Malik Monk. It's Malik Monk.
It's Malik Monk, man. I still love him. I never stopped loving Malik Monk. I wish it would have worked out here. I think, look, mistakes were made by him 100%. You know how I feel about how the organization handled also allowing him to leave. But you're right. It's not like he took that opportunity, completely ran with it. And I do think that Malik Monk is a good dude, right? I remember Nada did a profile on him when he was working for Uprocks and talked about how good of a guy he was, getting to talk to him every once in a while, just made some bad decisions off of the court. And I think that affected him. I do think that there was some opportunity taken away from him in some rotation stuff that I didn't agree with. But I think like minds can understand, yes, this is something where Malik didn't fully embrace it. And then eventually going with the Lakers and the Kings popped off really nicely. So that's the guy that's the guy I would go to as to how I wish it would have all worked out perfectly. Just a nice little puzzle. Every piece fits perfectly. That's what I would have liked the most if we're just talking about even recent Hornets draft picks.
Well, I was going to say that this is because of the Kings' success and Malik Monk's part in that, this is the rare what if that has a little bit of evidence of how things could have gone for the Charlotte Hornets had Malik Monk not even reached like all-star level, but had just reached some of the potential that the Hornets saw in him when they made him the draft pick. Malik Monk was a big part of getting Sacramento over the hump, which is what the Hornets still need to do. The Hornets and Sacramento, those were the two teams with the longest playoff drought. Now Sacramento has gotten over the hump, and now it's up to the Hornets to find that player. Hopefully that's Brandon Miller at this point, and he reaches all of his potential. That's not the player that I would select. There are a lot of draft opportunities here. I mean, Kaminsky, Vonleh, Gerald. You look back into the Bobcats days. I mean, you could go all the way back to Emeka Okafor and say, man, what would have happened to the Bobcats if Emeka had not gotten those injuries, and not tried to put on that weight to become the center of the 90s for some reason in 2004 and injured himself. His win shares are off the charts. Even with all those injuries, he was able to contribute to a lot. The few wins that the Bobcats got in that era, a lot of that was on Emeka Okafor. So what if that had worked out? But maybe that means, if you look at Adam Morrison or Felton or Okafor, if those players had achieved something of their top 5 status, we might still be locked on Bobcats. So I don't know if I really want that. So I'm not going to go with any of those players. I'm sort of, God bless the broken road that led me straight to, purple and teal, right? So I'm not going to go with any of those
Little
players.
Rascal Cats.
Oh, all right. I'll give it to you. That's good. So you threw me off there. MKG would be another popular one. At least we wouldn't feel so bad about the Anthony Davis, about the New Orleans things. That's a good one. But I'm not going to go draft. I'm going to go born ready, Lance Stevenson, the piece that went so wrong so quickly. It's not even about Lance Stevenson, the player. I wish Lance Stevenson would have worked out. It was the fact that because that was the last, I think, that's the move to me that really led us to Michael Jordan selling this team. I think after that move, Michael checked out. He was like, all right, I tried. I've done everything I can. And this just isn't working anymore. I don't think he made it like right after that, but it was sort of the beginning of the end for Michael Jordan's direct involvement in this franchise's affairs. Because if you look at Lance Stevenson having to move off that deal was a domino effect that led to Miles Plumlee, that led to Dwight Howard, that led to the second coming of Bismack Biyombo. Some of those were fun. Some of those were less fun, but it was all a domino effect that really killed the Charlotte Hornets' ability to, have an advantage in terms of their financials that would have allowed them to rebuild or build a contending team. So for me, it's absolutely Lance Stevenson. I wish that player would have worked out.
I actually do. If we're going to open up all of the qualifications here and it be a pretty loose interpretation of this question, I think there actually is a right answer. So what about Alonzo? Alonzo did work out.
Yeah, right.
But man, it was only 3 seasons. So the case for Alonzo is that it obviously didn't work out off of the court because temperaments were so high between him, Larry Johnson, the whole who are you going to pay thing. Zoe wanted out. That allowed people to get mad at the owner of the Charlotte Hornets. So there was so much anger because here you are having drafted a stud immediately upon stepping on an NBA court in Alonzo. And then he goes to the Miami Heat. Now, if Alonzo works out, then I'm not wearing my Glenn Rice Charlotte Hornets jersey or my Charlotte and Glenn Rice shirt. I'm not wearing, David Walker doesn't get to love Eddie Jones the way that he did for that a season and a quarter that he played here with the Charlotte Hornets. So that sucks, right? That part of the history sucks. But if Zoe works out and plays at least, 7-8 years here, whatever the definition of working out means, you have a close to top 75 player of all time. You have a Hall of Famer in Alonzo Mourning, who is a Charlotte Hornet and not a member of the Miami Heat or any of these, hey, we'll do a couple of years. No Tony Parker, Charlotte Hornets Hall of Famers, right? You actually have a true Hornet at heart with Alonzo working out. You have an anchor in a day and age where the big man did reign supreme. You're going to get Defensive Player of the Year awards if Alonzo works out. There is that extra special tier as far as a special player goes that this organization has never seen to this point, LaMelo being the best case that we'll have. Hopefully that comes to fruition. But Zoe, to me, might be the right answer, even if it means sacrificing the Glenn Rice history. And Glenn Rice might be my favorite player in Hornets history. Just crazy, Eddie Jones and all that. What do you think about Zoe?
Well, yeah, because then you get, chaos theory, butterfly effect, maybe Jordan doesn't retire. But you really look at those 2 years and go, could the Hornets with their main core together have competed a little bit better in the Eastern Conference playoffs?
And they talk about it a lot, Doug.
Dale does. Dale does for sure.
Yeah. They talk about how it could have worked out.
So I think you're totally right on that. Although, spirit of the question, as you said, Alonzo did work out in terms of they drafted a player and he reached all of those milestones that you would want a player to reach when that player was drafted. It's just, you're right. He could have been a Hall of Famer for the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets history could actually be storied instead of ironically storied as we chronicle on this show. So I'm not going to argue with you. I think you're right. I think if Alonzo works out, it's probably more than Lance Stevenson or Malik Monk or any of these players. It means an opportunity for the Hornets to actually win a championship. That's their best opportunity when Jordan retires for those 2 seasons for the Hornets to get up into the Eastern Conference and go up against Hakeem.
Yeah, I love that question. There's so many ways you can take it. Casual Hindu, we appreciate it, as always. All right, let's go to another one. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We go back to it. It worked out so well in the last segment. Let's do it again. Final segment, we rummage through the Sicko Satchel once more on the Locked On Hornets podcast. Let's go back to another Sicko Satchel question here, Doug. How are you feeling? I feel like you've been clean despite it. When I'm sick, I have phlegm for about a month, but it seems like you've been pretty good today.
It's weird. These past 2 times that I've been ill, this one did come with a sore throat, but it has not come with the normal symptoms that one would associate with a cold. I don't know what's going on, man. But I get the fever. I got the chills. And the only fever I have right now is Hornets fever, though. I want this team. I so badly want this team to play well this season. I need it. I'm a sicko. I need them to beat these Vegas expectations of 30.5 games. I need them to sneak through this group play and make a surprise appearance in this midseason tournament. I just need, especially, we haven't even talked about this. The other schedule thing that we haven't talked about is that the Hornets once again locked out of the Christmas Day festivities. They did not get, they're the only team that has never played on a Christmas Day game. It was them in Sacramento. Sacramento got one last season. Walker, how are you feeling about them not playing on Christmas?
Oh, I can't. Can you imagine if I allowed that to bother me anymore? I'd be, I'm good. It's not like they've earned it yet. Look, Brandon Miller is going to be the draw for the Charlotte Hornets, along with LaMelo, who's going to be a huge draw, right? So it's LaMelo and Brandon Miller. Yeah. Was that enough of a draw to overtake some of the joy that you might have with these other franchises that are playing on Christmas Day. I don't think it is. Not right now. So after one season with those two going at it, if Brandon Miller hits and plays and actually contributes in his rookie season, plays really well, maybe you can start to hope for it a little bit in Brandon Miller's second, but it's going to be a little bit of a road to get there. You got to be successful. I mean, even when you're on pace for 40 wins, that's not going to be enough to do it, really. So, yeah, I'm totally fine. I get it.
Well, I'll tell you, I was super upset about it until Dr. Horse gave me some horse tranquilizers. And so I said, thank you, Dr. Horse. I appreciate that. I needed that. So then I calmed down. And then once I calmed down, I realized that I really didn't want the Hornets to get a pity Christmas Day game.
Yeah,
to me, that's the nightmare. Is again, you're less a joke at that point than just completely irrelevant. Like, all right, fine, here, Hornets, have your Christmas game. It doesn't matter, whatever. You're just going to get stomped anyway. That's not what I want. I want them to make, some some kind of Atlanta Hawksian sneak run through the Eastern Conference playoffs that no one expected. And then the NBA, their hand is forced at that point. They've got to get this fun, exciting team with LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller and all these players that have made it through the Eastern Conference Finals. They've got to give that team national attention. That's what I want. I want this team to earn it. I want them to earn the Christmas Day festivities, and hopefully that will be next season.
All right, let's go to the next Sicko Satchel question. This one from Mark Schneis, 1868. It's a sick nickname, Mark Schneis.
Mark Schneis.
I like it. All right, very, very Mark Schneis, 1868. What he writes in is, as a lifelong fan from Australia, what would be your argument to draw international fans to support the Hornets? For me, as a child growing up in the 90s, it was the teal and purple. As you can tell, I'm a simple person, and color attracts me. He puts the U in color, by the way.
It's great.
Love the way that looks. We should do more of it. But for the people that aren't as simple as me, let's hear the draw as to why the Hornets could draw more international fans. It's funny because the color scheme, it's just another classic story of that. The color scheme is going to draw as much, it's even nationally, right? Like here we are talking international fans of the Charlotte Hornets, but even nationally, that was the draw for you to be a fan of the Hornets in California. Or as I would like to measure it, who's your second favorite 2K team? Who's your second favorite NBA Live team to play with growing up? Or maybe even your favorite outside of just who you are a fan of. Lots of people would choose the Hornets so they could put on the purple and teal and wear those jerseys on their television screen. The color scheme matters a ton. It's why we do a story. It's why we're reminded of it quite a bit. It's such a big part of the history. Doug, is there a draw for you as to why fans might want to be, or as why basketball fans might want to be Charlotte Hornets fans internationally?
And I think color still is a draw, not just the purple and teal. There was a novelty to it at the time in the 90s, and I think a lot of people were drawn to the novelty. The purple and teal still exists. Now you've got mint and gold as well. If they keep leaning into that, I think that is a little bit more of a novel look in the NBA, the mint and the gold. And so I hope they continue to leverage that, because I think that could draw a few fashionistas to the Hornets internationally. I have a unique perspective on this because I recently, as a lifelong soccer fan for 9 months, I recently had to pick an EPL team, an English Premier League team to cheer for, and I chose Manchester City. And a lot of people would probably accuse me of bandwagoning because City, won the treble. They won the 3 big soccer tournaments that you need to win to get the treble. And they have, but it's not because the team itself was good. I chose Manchester City because I watched Erling Haaland, their big striker. And when I say big striker, I mean physically, this guy's a monster.
I actually know who this guy is, so that's how you know he's good.
Right. I watched this guy play and I'm like, I can't take my eyes off of this player. That's what got me to be a Manchester City fan. It's just like, I enjoy watching this. Also, there's a financial element to it. Like Manchester City always plays on NBC, so I don't have to buy like Peacock and Paramount Plus and all these things you got to buy to watch your team play. It's the Notre Dame
fan effect. It's why so many Notre Dame fans exist, because you could watch them on NBC.
Right. So Hornets don't have that. They're not going to be on national TV a lot, but they do have a player in LaMelo Ball that I think does have that Erling Haaland-esque, like when I watch this guy play, wow, I can't take my eyes off of him. He's doing all of this crazy stuff. He's breaking physics with passes. He's hitting threes from almost half court. He's hitting these logo threes. So that's what, Mark Schneis, that's what I would tell you, is get someone, if you want someone to be an international fan with you, Just sit them down with some LaMelo Ball highlights and make sure they're buckled in. Maybe in a car, they buckle in for safety because they're going to get excited. They're going to get pumped up, and they're going to immediately become a Charlotte Hornets fan. And hopefully, again, Brandon Miller, hopefully he provides some of that same juice that LaMelo did in his rookie season, and we see him hit a ton of shots and do some things that are unexpected, and Brandon Miller can start that train as well.
Plus, the NBA is such a player-driven league.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon. That's a legitimate reason to pull for the Charlotte Hornets is if they have a star player. They have one, a young one, that you feel pretty good now about signing his rookie max extension, staying here long-term. Yes, I know the certainty is dwindling ever so with everybody changing. All right, I'm going to get the money, but I'm going to ask for a trade if the Charlotte Hornets don't start winning, which is very possible. So maybe that happens. But LaMelo signs the contract extension. He's so much fun to watch. With it being a player-driven league, there are so many just LeBron fans out there that will pull for Cleveland, that will pull for Miami, that are now Lakers fans because he just so happens to be donning the purple and gold. And so LaMelo could be that same guy for us. Maybe we have those fans on rent. Maybe that is the case, but that is the draw right now, is that LaMelo, not only is he good, just flat out good at basketball, but God, he's exciting. Like that's the draw outside of the color scheme.
Well, I'll give you one more, and I talk about this with current fans as well, and the draw is this. The moment that this team wins a playoff series, not an Eastern Conference Finals, not a championship, the moment that this team wins a playoff series, you get to celebrate something that hasn't happened in 21 years. You get to be a part of something that is routine for a lot of franchise fans, but that gets to be something special right up front. And if this team did dare to compete for an Eastern Conference Finals and a championship, I think you would see fans internationally and in Charlotte rally around this team in a really special way because there's been a lot of pin-up demands. This city of Charlotte did once sell out the Coliseum year after year after year. And how much of that will come back? Well, that's a question, but I hope that a lot of it would come back and you would see excitement, a lot of pin-up demand. But they're going to make, again, they're going to make history with some pretty simple things that they have to do because it's been so long. And you get to be part of that. I think that's the problem for me jumping on a Boston or an LA or a New York or whatever, even the Clippers, because they haven't had the success, but they've had the players, they've had the eras, with going back to Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and all that, is that you're jumping on something that, again, winning has become somewhat routine, or championships have become routine, or contention has become routine. It's not the case with Charlotte. Like, you are going to feel that excitement. Every milestone will feel like something special. So that would be my argument as well.
I like that. That is the first time coach recruiting ploy right there. It is, hey, do you want to come? Do you want to go to, I don't know, Alabama? Do you want to go to Clemson? Or do you want to come over here and actually start a possible championship and be the first part of that? Do you want to start a tradition? That is what you are selling to all of the fans that could be out there for the Charlotte Hornets. And also with the whole fans filling up the Spectrum Center, the Coliseum, whatever arena it's going to be called going forward. But that's something that we saw a couple of years ago, Doug, and it was the LaMelo Ball effect going on top of a winning record in the NBA. It was not as scarce. I mean, we saw people show up to the Spectrum Center. That's why when everybody is saying, can we ever get back to the Coliseum days? Yeah, we're probably not going to be selling out every single season and being number one in attendance for however many years straight. I mean, it was a lot. It was actually ridiculous. It's not going to be that again, but fans showed up to watch a winning team with LaMelo as the star, showing all of these highlights. So they'll show up if they win. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Well, I was just going to say, I would not make that particular history argument if it weren't for LaMelo Ball. Those two arguments, I think, have to live with each other. Because LaMelo Ball, to me, represents the actual ability to achieve some of those milestones. If we were still talking about some of their previous eras, I would not make that history argument. But I think with LaMelo Ball, if he stays healthy and if all of these other pieces come together, then all of a sudden you're talking about a team that does legitimately have a shot of winning a playoff series. Maybe not this season, but in the next couple of seasons. And current fans should be excited about that. And I think that's a selling point to fans, international or national. And if you happen to see me on the street, I'll just randomly pull out a pen and start signing, whatever you're wearing or whatever you're holding. Even if ask for it or not, I'll just do it.
That's right. Although if he looks like he's on horse tranquilizers, just run away. You don't want to deal with horse tranquilized dog. Just run away as fast as you can, especially if he does that noise. All right, thanks for making Locked On Hornets your first listen today. Make your second listen game to game NBA. With the season, it's coming up soon. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, just like our podcast. I don't want to promise you because I don't want to break the streak of us actually fulfilling our promises. We're on 1 day of fulfilling our promises. Let's try to make it 2. We'll be back with you tomorrow. We're going to release a Friday episode as well.
Schedule release is on Thursday, so you have to tune into the Friday episode because we'll break it all down.
All right. Yep. There you go. Schedule release and still top 35 Hornets and Hornets nicknames coming up this week. Thanks again for your time.